All right, you guys, it looks like I am live. Let me know if you guys are seeing everything. All right, I see lots of you guys in the chat already, and I'm so thankful for everyone who is joining. Now, some of you guys have seen me on my second channel at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time on Tuesdays. We go live and we craft over there. But I decided, let's start doing this on my main channel. So every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time, unless if I change it, or unless if I let you guys know. But I think that's going to be the new date where we just kind of sit down and craft. I think it's kind of fun to go live and chat with all of you guys and really share things live. Because sometimes I love to sit down and watch a longer video and get lots of different tips out of it. Because sometimes you can't put as many tips into the littler videos. So I hope this will be fun and helpful. Now today, I have been kind of not having my crafty mojo, as you guys might sometimes experience, and I'm going to go through some of the things that I do to get it back or to kind of get inspired. And today, I'm going to be using one of my background stamps. This one happens to be the Festive Florals background stamp, and I'm going to be creating 3 different cards with it. So that's one thing, is to just kind of revisit products that you already know and do some really fun techniques with it. So yes, there is a ton of you guys in here. Thank you all for joining. I am so excited to craft with you all tonight. So as you guys know, there is a supplies list down in the description box if you're looking for anything in particular. And then if you want to shop my product line, I'll leave a link in the chat right now. But you can shop it at Ranger or at scrapbook.com as well. And I appreciate you guys using the link because that really helps support me. Also, it's a little bit of a hectic night because they are putting a washer and dryer in. So if you guys hear any bangs or loud noises, that is why. All right, so let's turn on the work surface and get right into this. All right, guys, so this is my Festive Florals background stamp. This was released, I think, about a month ago. If you guys have this one, pull it out, or if you have something similar, you can pull it out as well, and we can craft along with it. So, I see lots of you guys here from Australia. That's so awesome, too. So this is an outline stamp. So I'm gonna be able to do some really fun coloring techniques with it. Now, one of the first things you can, of course, do with a background stamp is stamp it down. And that's going to seem weird for me to say, but my background stamps actually have these peel apart sections in them. And this is all throughout the stamp, and I'll talk more about it in just a little bit. So it's not too obvious that stamping is just one of the main things, but this is just one of the first things you could do with your background stamp. So I'm going to take out a piece of my stark white cardstock. I'm going to grab a piece here, and I'm going to do a little bit of this clear anti-static powder. All right, and then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to ink this up with some black ink. I'll go all around my stamp. All right. Make sure that it's all evenly covered. I think that looks good. And I want to give you guys a tip that I have with these backgrounds, or with really any stamp lately. I've been taking my piece of stark white cardstock, and I always stamp down into the stamp. I know there's some people that will place the stamp down. I find with background stamps, it's easier to place the project right into it. And then I'm going to grab a pressure tool. This one happens to be the Debbie stamping tool, but I know a lot of people are making these for the Misty stamping tool. And it is a great tool to just put some pressure down, not get your fingers all inky because, you know, sometimes that happens, but it also has a big surface area. So I just run it all around, and that, oh gosh, that is going to give me, oh, that wasn't too bad. That's going to give me my stamped image there. So that's what I like about it, is it's got a larger surface area, so it's going to do that coverage really easy, rather than your little fingers kind of trying to get all of the area there. So once I've got this done, I'm going to go in with a little bit of my clear embossing powder and throw that over top. And then you can put all your clear embossing powder over top like this. It's going to kind of create a little haze on top of there, and then you can heat this. Now I'm going to set this off to the side because I've actually heated one beforehand. That way it's not super loud. I don't always love when people use their heat tools, but I like to heat set all of my black stamping whenever I do it. I find that it just helps to keep things inside the lines, and it gives it a nice clean look as well. And then with this, to clean it off, I just go in with a little bit of water. You can always go in with some stamp cleaner too, if you're extra clean, and I'm just going to wipe it off. But I find that if you clean your stamps off, especially with red rubber, if you clean them off right away when that ink goes down, they don't get as stained, which I like. All right, so I'll set this off to the side for our next technique once we start it. But let's talk about what we can do with this. Of course, you can go in and do your really awesome watercoloring. That would take quite some time, and I don't know if you guys want to sit here and watch me watercolor. But tonight we're going to do a fun kind of blending technique that's a little bit easier for coloring things in kind of quickly. So I'm going to go in and bring in my blending tools. I see lots. Sandra said it's nearly 2 a.m. in Germany. That is so awesome. Thank you so much for being here. That means a lot. All right, so I'm going to go in with one of my most recent colors. This happens to be Love Struck, and I can just bring my blending brushes in. Now, the reason I like the blending brushes is because they have, they've got like this, the bristles don't give off as much ink right away. It's kind of difficult to explain why I love them, but you can kind of build up the color. I use both blending tools, both the foam and this, but sometimes I find that this is a little bit better when I want kind of this softer fade and to kind of build things up. That's when I usually reach for my blending brushes. So here I'm going to go in, and yes, it's going to go a little bit outside of the image. That's not really going to bother me too much, but I'm just going to do kind of an abstract coloring with my inks here. So you just go in and blend that out. And I like to start, this is why I love the blending brushes, because we can build things up. I like to start off with the kind of light version of that color, right? And then I'll go in, load my blending brush a little bit more, start from the center to give a little bit of shading, and then bring that back out and keep doing that until you're satisfied with the color. And this just builds up really nicely to create this color on here. Now, guys, I have talked about my cardstock before, and I know some people are kind of curious why you might use one cardstock over another, and this is why I always bring out these two swatch sheets. I did this a little while ago. This is both the same color. Besides the fact that it's brighter white, it takes the ink really beautifully. And the reason being is because you can layer. So you guys see how I'm layering up here? Sometimes with other cardstocks, they have kind of like a coating on top of them. And so even when you layer on top and keep going, like I layered this the same amount of times as I layered this Simon Hurley Create Stark White cardstock takes the ink really nicely, whereas this kind of moves the ink around, but it doesn't sink in and become a darker color. So that's why I love my cardstock quite a bit. I used to use this one quite a bit before I created my cardstock, and I just love it because it's a nice go-to surface where I can really blend the inks nicely. So I just wanted to mention that because I know some people have kind of told me, they're like, oh, well, I can't get my inks to layer like you can. It really is both about having a high quality ink and also a high quality cardstock too. But if you're fine with anything else, I'm fine with it too. It doesn't matter one way or another. So there we go. And then I'll go, there's some little sprigs of the poinsettia here in this corner. Blend that in. And I'll also blend this corner with a little bit of that Love Struck. I love this color. It's almost like a berry red color. I just love it. It really blows me away. So someone in the comments said, your cardstock rocks. Thank you. Yes, it took me, like, I went through about 40 cardstocks to find this one. And when I create my products, I'm like, it doesn't really matter. I create them just because I want to recommend things and I want things that I can love and not have to keep switching. And this cardstock was that for me. All right, so now let's get into leaves. Now, when it comes to doing leaves, there's a couple different things you can use, and I'm going to use both of these in today's video. I like these Altenew detail blending brushes to get into some areas. I like because they come in some different sizes, so you can get like really fine detail ones and also like larger ones like this. And this is going to be great for doing things like leaves. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of Viper and bring this right in. And this is more of like this olivey, almost like a little bit darker green color. It's almost in the same family if you guys are familiar with Psych. That's one of my favorite colors, and it's super bright, kind of yellow olivey color, and this layers really well with it. All right, so when I bring in this color, I'm going to go in and continue that same theme like we're doing here. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to stay in all the lines. In fact, the more color and kind of haze you add outside the lines, I love that effect. So that is just me, but it's up to you. And you guys can see this just blends really nicely out into white on that cardstock. So that's where these come in handy, to have little tools like this to just give this color that softer haze of the color and not have it be like overlapping everything else. You can really get into the finer details like this. Do you sell it in bulk? That's a great question. So Peggy, there is a link down below the video, and it's got all the supplies I use. And I think the biggest pack we sell it in is a pack of 50 sheets right now, and that seems to be quite a hit. So yes, you can either buy it in 10 sheets if you want to just try it out, or there's the 50 sheet pack if you're kind of restocking your cardstock collection and you want something a little bit more. That's the one I tend to get. All right, so just going in here, finishing off a couple of these leaves. And then again, with shading, I like to add a little bit of shading next to the flower because that's where it'll kind of come out. And there we go. All right. Did we get everything? And also, if I have the sniffles, I apologize. All right, so I'm going to put this blending tool away. That is looking great. And then when it comes to doing the other things, I like to mix up my greens. So this is why there are so many different greens in the line. There's a lot of greens, there's a lot of green blues. I love it because you get to kind of switch things up, and even if there's a lot of greenery, you can move into a couple of the different colors and try them out. So I'm going to put a link in the chat if you guys want to check out my product line, because I know lots of you are chatting about it in the comments. So I'm going to go in with another blending brush and just bring it into here. And I think you could either do these or these. I think for this one, I'm going to go in on here and blend this guy out. So again, starting off with that lighter color, and then I'm going to kind of fade it out and kind of blend it a little bit like that. So you can see that. And once this is all colored in, you're gonna have barely any white space left, and it's really just going to be all these colors mixing and mingling and blending. That's why I love doing backgrounds like this. I wanted to share this technique. Of course, like it is just stamping the image down, which is a pretty simple concept, but what you do with it after you're done stamping the image, there's a lot of different things you could do. So I wanted to share this because it's one of my faves. All right, so then I'll do this corner too. These are some of my favorite holiday florals I've done. All right, so once that's done, then I'm going to go in with another color here, and let's see, what do I want to do? I think for this one, I'm going to go in with a little bit of overzealous. And I'm going to just go in. I use a same blending brush for each kind of color category. Like, so for greens, I use the same one. And I'm going to just go in here and tap that off. Someone said, is there going to be discount codes at Ranger for the holidays? That's a good question. I actually haven't communicated with them about that yet. I'm sure they always do something for Black Friday. Sometimes it's bundle deals, so I'm not sure what they're doing this year. Yeah, I haven't quite talked to them about that. It's a good question, but I'm going to assume that they're having some sort of sale. All right, so over here we'll go in with a little bit of overzealous. So again, it's all about mixing and blending those greens together. And the cool part about mixing these greens, I'm not really going into the red, as you can see. I'm trying to avoid it because the red and green. Yes, Peggy did just say, use code Simon20 for 20% off. If it's your first purchase at Ranger, you can use the code Simon20 and it'll give you 20% off. Yeah, your first purchase. That's awesome because that helps support me too. All right, so that's perfect. I like how that's looking. And then last but not least, let's go in one more green, guys. I'm telling you, we've got a lot of greens in this line. My product manager was kind of laughing at me because there are so many greens and blues in here, but what can I say? I love these colors, and it seems like you guys do too. All right, so I'm going to wipe this guy off. This is another one of those little Altenew brushes. Let's see. All right. Yes, if you guys have questions about where you can get the products in the world, yes, share links if you're in the same spot as somebody else. I think that could be really super helpful to share your local stores that you want to support and things like that. Yeah, because if you can't get them in the US, it can be kind of difficult finding places. But I know there are lots of places. You just got to look for them. All right, so we'll go in here last but not least with a little bit of fake plant. I like this kind of, this is almost a true Christmas green here. I love it. Fake plant came out last year for Christmas, and it's one of my faves. All right, then there's a little bit down here. And I'm going to show you guys how to really step up this background too in just a second. And I think that's it for that one. Now for the berries, I do like to use these little blending tools too. So for this, I'm going to go in with a little bit of Bee Sting. It's a different color than Love Struck. So it's going to give us a little bit of a different look. And I'll go in with this foam sponge blending tool. This is one of the detail blending tools from Ranger, and I'm just going to go in and blend over top of these. And I'm just going to kind of blend it out and fade it a little bit. You want to make sure to fade it into those other colors to keep everything blended together. And I'll do it wherever those berries are. All right, and then last but not least, one more thing, guys. We're gonna go in and do our blending for the brown. Now let's go in with the same blending tool. And I'm gonna bring in a little bit of Gur. This is the only brown we have in the line, surprisingly. I think that needs to change next year. I think we need more neutrals. All right, so here I'm going to go in and shade these guys in. It is so hard, guys, to come up with neutrals because I have just such an urge to just keep adding colors and keep adding colors, but sometimes I forget how important it is to have the neutrals. This brown has been great, though. This has served me well. I chose a good brown right at the beginning, so yes, I do like this one. And I named it after my puppies, Woof and Gur. My dogs' names are Tazo and Oreo, and one of the dogs is a little bit more temperamented. He likes to growl sometimes, whether he's happy or sad, and then the other one is just a barker boy. So, yep. All right, so there we have our background all finished. I love the look of this. I know some people don't. Let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. But yeah, this is why I love it, because it's kind of subtle. There's definitely still a little bit of white space in there, but all of these colors kind of blend together and mix here and there to create just this beautiful looking Christmas background. So it's a different look than just coloring it in normally. Of course, you could stay in the lines and color in totally normal, but I wanted to share this really fun blending technique too. Some people are saying it looks too smeared. I love it, but yeah, it's totally up to you guys what your opinion is on this. So there is a couple things you could do to really step up this background. And one of the things is pulling in a little bit of Lunar paste. Lunar paste is some of my favorites. Now, you guys have been showing this paste so much love. You got the swatches up here, and it is just so shiny. I love this stuff. So one thing you could do with the Lunar paste is go in, and I like to use this Make Art stylus. This is from Wendy Vecchi, and I'm just going to go in here, dip this little guy right into here, and then I'm going to go in and put it right over top of the berries. Now, instead of going in with little gems or things like that, this is a lot easier for me, and I just go in with this little stylus because it can get into all of these small little details, and also we're adding such a thin layer of the paste that it's going to dry really quickly as well. So that's another reason why I really love adding this stuff down. It takes almost no time to dry when you add it so thin onto your cardstock like this. So I can go in every two dots. I have to kind of go back in and dip in for a little bit more paste. But yeah, this is definitely a way to step it up, add a little bit of shine to your project, and really bring those kind of berries and different areas to life that you want to really highlight. And there's a couple different colors of this paste. We're definitely going to add more colors next year, I think. But the different colors that we have can really help to highlight other items too. So if you don't want it to just be berries with this, of course, you can go in and do other things too. I think the centers of flowers are really pretty with the Lunar paste too, and it just adds that awesome shine to the background. Should we do these? We'll do these big berries too. And with the bigger ones, I just go in and kind of, I'm not adding as much to it, like kind of just smoothing it down a little bit. It's almost like this little stylus I use as like almost a marker with a little bit of ink to it. But it's just fun to go in and add some paste down. All right, so there we've colored in the little berries. Yeah, it's definitely a fun technique to add that down. And then, of course, if you want to, you can go in with a little bit of Lunar paste. This happens to be slippery when wet. And I'm going to go in and just bring in the same thing. I just cleaned it off on the side on a little paper towel. These are also really inexpensive, which is something that I really like about them. And you can go in on the center of our poinsettias and add a little bit of gold. So if you guys noticed, we skipped over that at the beginning. Sometimes I go in and add yellow, but this can be a fun way to add that little bit of gold back into the center. It's just a cool way to add these little details. And it's these little tiny details on the cards that really will make people look twice, and it's what really makes the card kind of stand out. So even though the little things are a little bit time consuming, I love to do them to add these little tiny details on here. All right, so all right, I am going to go in. Let me see. All right. So, all right. I don't know what's going on in the chat, but I'm going to lift this up and you guys can see that really awesome shine there. Now I can go in with a Ranger heated craft tool, and I'm going to go in and just heat set this. And I just want to kind of show you guys how, number one, how fast this Lunar paste dries. But also, one thing that I've learned about the Lunar paste is that they grow and shine as you let them dry. I think once the kind of moisture from that Lunar paste goes away, because it's got a little bit of shine just from being wet, and then once that goes away, you get just simply the shine from the actual paste, and it is just stunning and radiant. So like I said, that finishes it off nicely. Let's see. Yeah, that yellow is perfectly dry. The red, really nice and dry, and that finishes off that card. I love it, guys. So we'll go in at the end and finish off the cards if we have time, but this is a great background, and all you have to do is finish this off with a sentiment, and you've got yourself a great Christmas card to yourself. And yes, of course, if you want to, you can go in and do just regular watercoloring on this, which I'm going to share next. All right, so next, one thing I want to talk about with these stamps. This is the, I think someone's asking, like, if the Lunar paste, once it's dry, if it comes off. It doesn't. It doesn't come off on your fingers. There's no glitter in it. That's one thing I love. It's got that classy shine without really having any glitter come off on the recipient's hands or anything like that. All right, so bring in my Festive Florals background stamp. Now, a lot of stamps in the line of Simon Hurley Create are like this, but this, you can see by those lines, there's several images in this stamp that peel out and you can use them separately. So I'm going to go in and you can peel off these stamps. Oh, that's what she said. Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, the Lunar paste does not puff up. No. And if you want to, you could always just let it dry by itself too. And that's kind of a better way to go when it comes to paste. But if you're impatient like me, yeah, I've heat set the Lunar paste before. You just don't want to bring heat directly to it. But if you're kind of moving your heat tool around, it's not going to puff up. No. All right, so for this, I'm going to go in with, again, my stark white cardstock, because this is what I use for my watercoloring too. And then I will go in and stamp this down. So what makes this awesome is, yes, I totally understand. You could stamp down that whole background stamp, and then you can cut those out too if it's a regular background stamp. But one thing that's cool about this too is you can take this stamp, and actually I'll show you in just a second, right after I do this. So I'm going to stamp this down. So it makes it so we can stamp our images separately and not have to worry about masking anything off or anything like that. And then again, to clean them off, go in with a little bit of water and wipe them off. Now, I again am going to go in with the clear embossing powder, and I already did do another one of these where I threw over a layer of clear embossing powder and I heat set it. So what that does when I'm going to watercolor is it allows there to be a clear kind of a wall there so that it's not going to, so it's going to hold in the colors and not let it bleed outside the lines. So that is really an awesome effect to it. So let me see. All right, so I'm gonna add some moderators here just so that you guys can help people out in the comments, which will be awesome. So I love how this looks. Now with the whenever I'm watercoloring, I always like to clear heat emboss because it will give you that wall and barrier. And even though I have been watercoloring for quite some time, I still need that and love it when I'm watercoloring. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little better, and I'm going to share lots of amazing watercolor tips. Now, before we go in and do this, I did want to share quickly one thing you could do with this stamp is, of course, here I'm going to go in with a little bit of Love Struck. And I'm just going to wipe off the leaves a little bit from that red ink. Of course, if you have mini inks, it'll probably work a lot easier. But then I can go in with a little bit of Viper as well. And ink up the leaves. And the thing that I wanted to show that's so cool about the peel aparts, and this probably works better for some of the other images from the peel apart line of stamps from my line, but the cool part about this is I can go in then, I've sprayed a little bit of water down for a little bit of a watercolor effect, but if I want to, I can stamp this just right in the center of my card, and then you can heat emboss over top of it, but then I don't need to cut it out. So that's the really awesome part about it. If I wanted to just stamp down an image flat on my card without cutting it out, I couldn't really do that in the past with a normal background stamp. So that is the reason why we've created it. So you can stamp it anywhere, you can create your own patterns and things like that. But today we're just using it in a simple way, in the fact that we're just going to stamp them down and do a little bit of watercoloring and end up cutting them out in the end. All right, so yes. All right, so I'm going to go in and do a little bit of watercoloring. I'm going to start off with, again, a little bit of Love Struck, because I've really been loving that color. Going to add them down onto my craft sheet here. And then I'm also going to maybe go in with a little bit of Game Over for a little bit of shading. That's the darker color there. And then I'll go in with some Viper, a little bit of Fake Plant. You guys can hear my dogs. And then we'll bring in a little bit of Shooting Star. Great. All right, so whenever I'm watercoloring, I like to add my inks right down onto my craft sheet. Another thing that you could do is you could always go in with your reinkers and add them down into a palette. I know that some people like to do that as well, but I prefer just leaving them on my desk. I use these Ranger Artist brushes. I do have them linked down below in the description box. And these are some awesome brushes because I don't like spending a lot of money on brushes, but this is a really great pack with different sizes, and the brushes seem to be holding up really nicely, and they seem to hold a nice fine point, so they're what I like to use. So I just spray down a little bit of water on my surface, and the first thing that I like to do whenever I'm watercoloring, and yes, I'm just using my Stark White cardstock here, I like to just go in with a layer of water. Now, I'm not talking flood the cardstock, anything like that. I'm just talking a little layer of water so the cardstock gets kind of used to holding onto colors. This is one of my biggest tips because I see sometimes people go in with their color right away, and then what the ink is going to do is the cardstock has just had nothing on it before, and so the ink is just going to be sucked right in, and you're not going to be able to move it or blend it around. So that's where this water comes in handy. It's been one of my biggest lifesavers and biggest tips, because then when I go in with my second color, so here I'm going in with a little bit of Love Struck. When I go in with that color, you can see that when it touched the surface, it kind of wicked out a little bit. That means it's blending on the surface, and you've got a lot more time to move it, to wiggle it around before it seeps right into the surface of that cardstock, and then it won't be movable, right? So that's why I like to add that down. Now for my first layer here, I like to go in with, again, a little bit of water. Not too much, not so that it's spilling out anywhere, and again, those walls from the embossing really help, but just to kind of create this wash of color over top of the surface. And you guys will know too, if you struggle with watercolor and you haven't used that tip where you add the water down first, I think that that's going to really change things for you and help you out, because I used to not be a big fan of watercolor either until I tried that, and I was like, wow, that is a game changer. And also, Another big thing for me is I know I encouraged you guys to try out these brushes. These are some of my favorites. I used to use a water brush, and sometimes I find you couldn't control how much water came out, which was a little bit aggravating. Now I'm going to keep the surface. It's still a little bit wet. It's not super dry to the touch right now, because then I can go in and add my next color in. And I'm going to go in with a little bit of Game Over and go in and add a little bit of shading. So just going to add some shading right at the edge here, and then use a little tiny bit of water and help that blend out a little bit more. So that's my favorite thing to do. Of course, you guys could just leave it exactly where it is right now and not do anything extra, but this is one of my favorite things, to add a little bit of shading, a little bit of depth and dimension to it by just adding a little bit more color on top. And I always like to kind of shade right from the center. I find that that is the best way to do it, because wherever the leaves are overlapping in the center, that's where it's going to be the darkest. So this creates a really nice depth to the image that you're creating. But like I said, you could just leave it totally with one color, and that is perfectly fine too. And also another thing I wanted to mention, with this color, I'm using a lot less water because I don't really want this to wick out. Whenever you add water, it makes the color quite a bit lighter, and we don't really want that either. We want to keep it nice and dark and solid. So that is why I'm using just a little tiny bit of water, not too much, and just going in and adding this color down for a little bit of shading. All right, I haven't looked over in a second. Let me do it. Sometimes I get a little focused. You're not good at shading, try these tips. I swear, try them, and they will for sure help you out. I know that a lot of these tips I didn't know, but like I just learned watercoloring over time. I just kept trying, and these tips have been big game changers in the effects of my watercolor and how easy it is. But I swear that water at the beginning, that's going to change the whole look of your flower or whatever you're coloring in, and how it blends. It's going to really change it. So make sure to add that water. All right, so that is the blending. Now, to all the people that said the other one looked a little bit smeared, you can try this as well. This is going to give you a cleaner effect. I totally get it. Everybody's got their preferences. So I just like to share different things so that everybody is going to have something that they like. All right, so I'm going to go in here. Again, little layers of water. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't even really need to stay in the lines with it. We got that embossing down, and that is going to really keep anything from going outside the lines. It gives you almost like a little well to add your color into. So I'm adding down my Viper to start off with. You can see that color just lays down really nicely since we've added that water down. And the watercolor is really forgiving too. So if you've got a little bit too dark of a color like there, it's a little bit too dark for my liking, you can always go back in with a little bit more water, kind of lift things up and add a little bit more shading. It's pretty forgiving like that. And then one more to finish it off. All right, and then with these leaves, you can also go into a different category with it. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of fake plant and just go in and add some shading. And that color combination together is going to look just beautiful. The fake plant is a little bit more of a bluer green, whereas the Viper is more of an olive yellow green. So it really brings a whole new look to it. But by blending those colors together, you get first off that little bit of shading there, but you also get like a whole new, almost two-dimensional color, which I think is awesome. So that's another great tip. Play around with the colors to see what looks it'll give you. I promise you guys. We make different colors, not because we want to just keep charging you for more, because honestly, they're all different like tones of the color. So I really make different colors because it's needed. And so like here, we're not just mixing two greens together that are the same exact shade, just different variations of it. They are completely different, and it gives a really cool look when you blend them together like that. So somebody asked if my cardstock doubles as watercolor cardstock. I honestly use it for almost everything in my card making. You guys will rarely see me pull out watercolor cardstock or anything like that anymore. It's very good at what I would call techniques. So if you're going in like I am and not like going overboard with the water, yes, you can work it a little bit. Yes, you can blend things together. can you like really work it? I mean, at a point, every cardstock is going to start pilling. But with everything that I'm showing you today, yeah, this will work perfectly with. I really love it. And again, just add that heat embossing as well. And yeah, you can watercolor with it. I do a lot of different background techniques. All the ink blending, it takes ink just beautifully. I've also seen lots of people say that it works well with Copics too. I don't do a lot of Copic work, but I have heard that it's really great for that. All right, so then a little bit of fake plant on those leaves to blend and add just a little bit of shading into there. All right, so then last but not least, berries. We're gonna go in here. We don't have to add water. It's really only on the really large spaces where you want to add that flood of water, mainly because you want the color to keep moving. But here it's like, it's totally fine if it just sinks into the cardstock because it's just those little tiny spaces. All right, these are all complete. Now we can go in, let's see what we're gonna get with this. I don't know if it's gonna be anything good, but you can spray it from your craft sheet then and pick it up. These are going to make mud if you blend them around too much because it is red and green on the color wheel make mud, but I like where that went, so you could totally keep this and use this as another background to clean up your colors. Cool, I totally thought it was gonna make a more brown color, but if you don't mix it too much, it's really awesome. Someone is talking about my table here. This is a laminate. So yeah, that is a great surface to work on. Now, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend you using a craft sheet. I don't want you guys to ruin your nice tables because this one has gotten stained here and there, but it's just because it looks better on camera than a craft sheet and it doesn't glare. All right, so I'm going to go in and just heat set this till it's nice and dry. Any plans for a craft room tour? Someone asked. Yes, there are definitely plans for it. I think during Christmas I'll do it. I honestly just have to clean in here. It's getting messy, and there's a lot of different videos I've got to do, but soon, I would say. And also, I've got to get more organized. I used to have everything in tip-top shape, really organized well. I don't do that as much anymore. I don't spend as much time organizing because a lot of it's just my products. So anything else, I honestly don't organize too well. All right, I'm going to go in with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors and cut this out. There aren't dies with this, but there are those digital dies. So if you guys have a Cricut machine, you can head over to rangerink.com, and on each one of the stamps page, there's an option to buy the stamp or the digital die cut, and you can check those out if you like that. But honestly, and I know I've said it to a lot of people, I don't mind fussy cutting, especially when it's these images. It's pretty simple to do because it's just a really nice outline, right? There's not a ton of details. And I'm going to even show you on this next little stem that I did, really how I make it even easier for myself. I leave that little bit of a white border, and then I move the cardstock instead of moving the scissors. I find that that helps me get a nice smooth line. But some people have been commenting to me, it really is all in the scissors. I got these linked down below in the supply list, but these have a spring in them. So they spring back out of your hands, so it doesn't make your hands tired as you're cutting. One of my favorite things. Honestly, guys, one of the best little craft room tools you can have. And it's not too expensive either, but it'll make things a lot easier to cut out for you. All right, so just finishing it off here. And yeah, I leave that little bit of a white border, not only because it's a little bit easier, right, to give a white border all the way around because it doesn't need to be perfect, but I also do it because no matter what background we put it on, like whether it's a colored background or something like that, this is going to really stand out from it, right? The white is going to set it apart from the background and make it really shine. So that is why I also add a little bit of that white border. All right, so I love that. There is the first image. And one thing you can also do when you cut out these images is you can flip it over, and you guys know, like those edges or anything like that, if it's not super smooth, go in with your Teflon bone folder. It's got to be Teflon. this time because you don't want to make marks all over this. And Teflon doesn't make marks, and that is going to really flatten things out and smooth it out. Now let's talk about going into something like this. This is a lot easier to cut out when you do what I do, all right? So watch this. We're gonna go in, leave this little bit of a white border, like always, but some people might be tempted to go into all of these little berry details. Not for me, absolutely not. Look, I'm gonna round that corner, we're gonna go right through, we're gonna round this corner. So we take little shortcuts here and there on the Simon Hurley channel, but honestly, I find that nobody really notices or cares if you really get into all of the tiny little details in your fussy cutting. You just want the majority of that white space gone and kind of round the corners. So like, yeah, if there's a space you don't want to necessarily get all into, like here, I don't know if I really want to get right into there because it might break off the cardstock. I'm just going to round the corner and continue my fussy cutting. So that is one easy thing that I do. And you guys will look at this and be like, oh, that's not bad. He just skipped over those tiny little areas, right? So don't make it harder than it has to be. That's really the takeaway here. It doesn't need to be super difficult if you don't make it really difficult. All right, so just finishing up on this one. And this is just one sprig, but we're gonna actually turn it into two in just a second here. So just cutting down here. Round in that corner. All right. And honestly, guys, a lot of people talk about die cuts. There might be die cuts next year, but I haven't found it to be too difficult to just go in and fussy cut what I want. But I know lots of you guys want dies, so those are probably coming next year sometime, which will be exciting. Can't promise anything, but that's the hope. All right. Just finishing off and ending it here. All right, so once we've got this guy cut out, this one could definitely use that same tip. Use your Teflon bone folder, bring that in, because this guy definitely, when you go around those edges, sometimes it just curls the edges a little bit. This tip, I swear, it just really helps to bring it back to normal. All right. So there we have our little focal point images, and I'm going to put these on a card in just a second. That's not a promise. That wasn't a promise. It was a we hope. But yeah, I know a lot of you guys are hoping for the dies, so definitely we'll keep that on our radar for sure. All right, so here is the other way to use them. Add them as a focal point, right? That is a really fun way to do it. And I think one thing this could use is, again, going in with our little Lunar paste, bringing it right in on our little dotter tool. It's a little stylus. And just go right in the center of that poinsettia and make it shine. I think that is just so much fun to add that little shine in the center there. Add that little detail, and it's, yeah, like I said, a lot easier than going in with a bunch of little gems. All right, so last but not least, the last technique that we can do. So when it comes to peel apart stamps, we peel these apart. Now to put them back together, it's literally just a puzzle. All you gotta do, put that right back in as it was cut out, and it was laser cut from there, so it's really precise. And then if it's in the center of your stamp, there's a couple tips I can give. So you're going to press it into here, and I could of course press that down. If something's not going in perfectly, just kind of pull apart a little bit on your stamp, and that's going to just let all of the edges sit nicely back down into there and get everything pieced back together. So let's talk now about the background. So last thing we could do with it is, of course, use our stamping foam. And so with the stamping foam, let's talk about it. If you guys haven't seen this before, I'm going to share a little bit about the stamping foam. Of course, if you have seen it, we can create another awesome image together. So I like to use the acrylic blocks. All day I've been using the Simon Hurley Create acrylic blocks. It comes in a 2-pack, one larger one and one for the sentiments. This larger one happens to perfectly fit your stamping foam. So I like to go in with a little bit of mint tape or any low tack tape. And I'm just going to roll these up like this and place them down onto the back of my stamping foam. And then all I have to do is go in, place that down, and what this is going to do is, instead of it being, look guys, I literally have this image saved on here because I keep them on my stamping foam. That was definitely just a sneak peek at a different stamp that I wasn't supposed to show you. So when you press down your stamping foam, usually by itself, like it's a squishy medium, right? So when you press it down over here, it's not going to press down over here because it's not firm, right? But when you have this hard surface like the acrylic block on top and you're pressing into it, it's going to give pressure all around. So that's why I add it to an acrylic block. Yes, use something low tack, that way it won't ruin your acrylic blocks. So I'm going to have my stamp ready like this, and then I'm going to go in with my heat it tool. You can of course use a regular heat tool as well. Just keep your heat tool moving so that it doesn't burn the foam. And I'm going to heat it for about 10 to 15 seconds. Yeah, you guys, I'm not even teasing you guys. I just accidentally did that. I was like, oh yeah, I've got it on both sides, and really forgot that I was working with a new stamp set. All right, so then I'm going to place it right into there, give some good pressure. And you guys can see I did that so fast, right? I don't wait. I don't go around and let it cool off. You want it to be as hot as possible when you first press it down into there, and that's going to give you the best impression possible. I like how this looks. I think that's cool. All right, so then we can talk about coloring this in. So, did someone say they have 10 packs of stamping foam? Oh my gosh, Cal, that is so awesome. Yeah, it's got a great price point to it. That's one thing that I love about it. So, yeah, I go in and I purchased a lot of the stamping foam packs too because I go through a lot because, like I said, when I snuck you guys this one, I keep the images on here and you can keep them for, I think, however long they stay, which I think is forever until they get heated again. So you can keep reusing those stamps over and over if you absolutely love it then. Now to color this guy in, I'm going to go in with a little bit of Love Struck again. Now I like to use these little detail blenders for things like this. These are the Ranger detail blenders, and this time I'm going in with the Ranger ones because, like I said, the foam adds more ink down. So there's a time and place for both of them, and when I'm using my stamping foam, I want there to be lots of ink down onto the surface. So that is the case in which I would pull this guy out. So go in and add ink down to your poinsettias. And so for all the people that saw that watercoloring technique last and saw that first blending technique and didn't really love it, this might be a technique that you like. It's a little bit easier than the watercolor technique. It's gonna give a pretty clean look to it, and it's pretty easy to color in as well. Then if you want to add a little bit of shading, you totally don't have to, but I like to encourage it because it'll give a little bit of depth to it. I'm going to go in with a little bit of Game Over right in the centers here to add just a little bit of darker color. You guys can see that it's pretty easy to do. And then I'm going to go in these little areas. Now it's difficult with the little tiny areas to go in and add that red, but we're going to try. And then also one thing that you can do with those little berries is go in with a little marker too if you have one. I don't know if I have a marker on hand to do that, but if you do, that's a good way to do it. So then, all right, let's go into greens. I'm going to go in with a little bit of my Viper. And I got to get out. And look, this is my blending tools. No rhyme or reason, no labels. This is how organized I am. It literally just has random colors on it, so I just grab whatever color it looks like and go in. So with Viper, just bringing in a little bit of color there. And this, you guys, it's so easy to do. And when it comes to the stamping foam, I always like using my big pads on it. And I always tell you guys, don't really stamp down. So with this, even, I'm just rubbing the ink onto the surface, and I find that that is going to give your best ink result. All right, so let's go in with, let's do some fake plant. for this guy. You can always turn these little guys on its side too and get it way smaller into all those details. But then, of course, when it gets to something super small like this, it's going to be kind of difficult. But one thing you guys can do is just go in and kind of follow that line as close as possible. But you are going to go outside the lines just a little bit on something like this because it's such a tiny little stem of flowers. But yes, like I said, if you want to and you want to go in with your inks and get a really precise line, that's another way to do it. Sometimes with the markers, though, I find that I get too dark of a look, which you might not want. And then let's do overzealous for this guy. Get that little stem and bring it all the way up. All right, looking good. And then last but not least, guys, we'll go in. I told you, it comes together faster than you would think. Yes, it's got a couple little details you have to work in, but when it comes to this or watercoloring or anything like that, this is definitely faster. Did I just discover something new? Tapping might give you like a little bit. Okay, so if you want shading, here I'm going in with a little bit of gur, and I'm going on with the same color and tapping it with the sponge. So it is still the sponge, which is going to give a lighter look, and that's going to give you a little bit of a darker color. That's kind of cool. And then also I'll go in with a little bit of slippery when wet and just do the center of that poinsettia. Now you could totally leave it where it is right here, but I'm going to do one more thing. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring in a little bit of one of my favorite colors, dun, 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 breakup blue. This is a really awesome color for going in and doing backgrounds like this that you want to just be nice and subtle. And so I like to just go in, because the reason why this stamping foam is so special is because it's a reverse image. So we're getting all these awesome images in here, but also instead of just stamping down the image, you get a full-blown background. So that's the really cool part about this. Why not make it a full background, right? Why not add the color into the background and make it look completely and totally finished off? So we're just going to go in and lightly blend over the top. It's going to give me a nice even blend since I'm using all that same color. And fill in the whole background. And like I said, these little sponge tools are easy to go in. Now, if you find that like there's little areas, just go in with a lighter touch, because then it won't sink into all of those little tiny areas. Just kind of avoid them by going around them, but it's pretty easy to keep it away from there. All right, so now that we got this all done, look at how cool that is, guys. I am just loving this. All right, so let me go over to my face camera. Hey guys, long time no see. Now I got this mister linked down below too. This is a fine mister. And the really awesome part about this fine mist is if you struggle with getting a fine mist from any other spray bottle, this is the one you want to try. It's one of those continuous fine mist for plant bottles. So the really awesome part about it is I can bring it, you still want to keep it far away, but I'm going to spray it like that, and you can see it's just wafting a nice fine mist at it. There's no globs or anything like that. And when I show you guys this, you'll see you don't want globs. You don't want a ton of water on the surface. You just want enough to kind of blend it, and it's going to make the color a little bit more solid when we stamp it down. But again, yeah, you don't want that really super watercolory look. Unless you're going for that, then add a little bit more water to it. All right, so I pressed that down onto the surface. When I lift it off, you get this beautiful, almost vintage looking, like it is so cool. And even look, that area where we didn't really quite stay in the lines, like it just, I love it. There's not even any words for it. It's so cool to be able to go in there and create this look with it. I love going in and coloring everything differently. Now, of course, you could go in and you could ink up the background with different shades of red all the way across or different shades of green, but this is one way to make things a little bit more special. But if you're doing Christmas cards, yeah, just go in with solid colors all across and it's going to give a really beautiful background like this. But yeah, this is another way to use it by giving that awesome and beautiful reverse image on there. I think this turned out super cool, guys. I love it. And one thing you could do, I'm going to go in and I sprayed it again. Now this time I added a little bit too much water probably. You want to be careful still with that mister. You still want to hold it far away from your project. You always are going to want to do that with any mister because otherwise, no matter how fine the mist, it's still going to soak the project if it's super close. Here, if you stamp it again with any excess that was still on there, it's going to give you a beautiful, more washed out watercolor look. I think you can still tell that that's a poinsettia, but it's not as stark and dark as the first background. I still wanted to show that just so that you can get two different things from the one background. And yeah, some people said it looks old school. I totally agree. I think it is so cool. It almost has a little like speckled kind of grungy look to it. Awesome. So now to clean this off, let's talk about cleaning. For anybody who hasn't seen the stamping foam, all you need is a little bit of water, depending on what ink you used. Now, if it's a more permanent ink, it might stain your stamping foam. That's no big deal. If it does, it's not going to harm the stamping foam. One thing you can probably use is either a little bit of stamp cleaner, or you could try like a rubbing alcohol, and that will probably take some of the harsher inks off there. But mine just cleans off with water. And then I'm going to go in and I can reheat this to remake it go back to flat. So I'm gonna go in with my Ranger heat tool again. It's literally like magic. You're gonna wanna heat it for about 10 to 15 seconds. And look at that, guys. It's starting to disappear already. Go right back to flat. How cool is that? I would say it's literally almost like the magic of heat embossing. There's like a couple of things in crafting that everybody's like, whoa, like that was super cool. This is one of those. So it goes right back to flat and you're able to reuse this foam over and over. All you gotta do is heat it up again and then stamp it right back into it. Now this comes in a pack of 4. Again, I have the stamping foam linked. I've got the acrylic blocks linked and everything like that so you guys can check them out. This is a really, really awesome way to really bring a new life to your stamps. You can do it with dyes, any other products like that, or even household items you can press it into and get really cool textures. All right, so let me finish off one of the cards. Which one do you guys want to see me finish? I think I'm going to... Let's do the stamping foam one. I thought that one was just stunning. I thought that one was just so beautiful. All right, so I'm going to go in and finish this off by using a paper trimmer. So I'm going to bring the paper trimmer in here, and I like to use this little edge. So what I do is I just line it up with the edge. I press the background out and then pull it back. Just line it up, the design there. And that's going to give me a nice even border all the way around. So I'll do the same thing on this side, no matter how crooked I stamped it. If you line it up evenly right here, it's going to give you an even border all the way across. So that is one idea that I love to do. Of course, you could use any of your frame dies too to really finish that off. And there we go. We've got our background is starting to come to life here. So to finish this guy off, do we like this? I think that's a stunner. That is super cool. Do we think? I think that's the way to go. All right, so I'm going to go in here with this. I think this is asparagus green from Gina K. It is absolutely a beautiful color to it. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of tape runner. You could use a liquid adhesive or anything like that. And place this right down, line it up on the center of my card. And press that down. And then to finish this off, I'm going to go in with a sentiment. Now I'm going to use a sentiment from the Handwritten Christmas stamp set. I absolutely love this set and it's all of my handwriting in here, which is so much fun. I love doing stamp sets like this. So we can test things out. We can either do the Merry Christmas. We've got Sending Good Tidings, Happy Holidays. I think the Merry Christmas is good for this one. I love this banner with it. I drew this in a coffee shop while my friend was doing homework. I was drawing. So, yes. I drew it quite a while ago, actually. So I'm going to bring in a little bit more black ink. Stamp this down. And then again, you know what, this time we're going to bring it onto camera. We are using a little bit of my clear embossing powder. I like to, if I clear emboss anything, I always like to just throw over a layer. Honestly, guys, if you know me by now, you know I love that. It just gives a finished effect on the card. I'm gonna mute myself for 1 second. All right, so once that is all heated, we can move that off to the side. And to finish this off, I want it to kind of match the rest of my card here. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of that same red color that we used. We're gonna go in with a little bit of Love Struck. Let's see, how long have we been going for? You guys don't mind if I go a little bit over, right? We're at 1 hour right now. I'm gonna go just a little bit over so I can just finish off this card. And also I want to show you guys how to put together that bouquet. So let me just go in here. I'm going to add down a little bit of water again. And again, we're just on my Stark Weight cardstock. For this, I'm just going to bring in my water, go all over this banner, and then we'll go in with a little bit of Love Struck for that light wash of color. I'm telling you guys, add your water down first. It even helps with little things like this. Makes them a lot easier. All right, and then if you want to, you could literally use that same exact color. Here I'm just going with more Love Struck and just adding it to the edges with less water, and you could use the same color for shading too. I don't know if I mentioned that. But yeah, you can bring back in that color and that's gonna give you beautiful shading. But if you want to, you can always go in with a little bit of another color, like Game Over, and add some of that to there too. Cool. I think that banner turned out fun. Kel said, oh, I can stay here with you for another hour and craft. Well, that would be fun, but sometimes I think it goes a little bit too long, so I'm just going to keep it at, I'll try to keep it at an hour, but if we need to go over just to finish the card, that is totally okay. And I'm having fun sitting and crafting and chatting with you guys. I know at the beginning I was like, oh, my mojo, it's kind of like gone. Sometimes you become a little bit uninspired, but like I said, revisiting things that you know. So like these are all stamping techniques that I knew how to do and things like that. And then revisiting products, like if you've purchased something recently, like, you know, this Festive Floral stamp, it recently came out and I've used it before, but I wanted to really explore the possibilities of the stamp, and there's lots of it. There's lots of things you can create, right? So I thought it was really fun to play with it and give a couple of different effects and different looks so that everyone can find something that they love from it. All right, so just going in and cutting this out. I always say with sentiments, even if the sentiment doesn't have a die, which I know a lot of sentiments don't come with dies, I always say cut them out like this, fussy, cut them around the edge. I find that sometimes people leave them in like a rectangle, and that's good and fine sometimes, but the reason why I like to fussy cut them out is just because it will leave that little white border and it'll make it so that you will make the background or whatever you've created stand out more. So, you know, I'm not just leaving this on a rectangle and having, you know, it take up more space on my card. I don't want it to cover up my background fully. So having this little bit will still allow the background to shine by itself. So with this guy, I'm gonna go in with a little bit of foam. You guys, I have been loving these Gina K foam squares. I love this little box that they come in because it's an easy dispenser. Sometimes they get a little stuck in there, but you can always pull it back out like this. And this box, I wanted to show this. This box is cool because you can dispense a couple out like that, and it's just easier to store than a full sheet of them. All right. So I'll go in here add a couple of my foam dots down for a little bit of dimension. You can even cut them in half if you want, because you want every area to have a little bit of foam on it. Like this. All right. And peel all those pieces off. And I'm going to add it, I think right here. I don't want to cover up the poinsettia, so I'm going to kind of center it at the bottom a little bit more. Not totally centered. I love that. That looks super awesome. That green cardstock really finishes it off nicely, and I like that simple sentiment on top of that really cool, almost vintage looking background that we created using the stamping foam. All right, guys, I love how that one looks. All right, so I am going to finish off the other two cards. I wanted to share them here, all of these different techniques, but I'll finish these off and share them on social media. But I really, really enjoyed having you guys here, playing around with the different techniques that you can do, all with just one background stamp. I thought it was a fun topic for tonight's live. And thank you all so much for joining me. Again, I'm going to leave a link in the chat for all of the supplies. It really means the world to me that you guys join me and come support me for this live. It was so awesome sitting down and chatting with everybody. Once again, I'm going to be going live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. So join me here and we can have lots of fun crafting every single week, unless if I let you guys know that I'm a little bit busy that week. But this was a ton of fun. I hope you guys learned lots from the techniques. I see lots of you guys saying thumbs up, so be sure to leave a thumbs up in the video and click that subscribe button if this is your first time here. I would love to have you around and chat with you a little bit more often. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your night and a good ending to your Tuesday. Yeah? Have a great night, guys.